Chosen one. I speak because this moment was appointed. Not random, not emotional, not delayed. You were stopped on purpose, because if you passed by, something would be missed, and once missed, it would not return. This night is a line drawn by heaven itself. What stood on one side cannot cross with you. What pressed you until breath felt tight. What lingered longer than it should. What stayed hidden inside family walls. It has reached its limit. I did not move because someone finally obeyed. I moved because something endured long enough. There are times I respond to obedience, and there are times I respond to expiration. Tonight belongs to expiration. Something spoken inside your family. Something endured in silence. Something swallowed because survival required it. Reached a point I would not ignore. Words you never heard were recorded. Tears you thought dried were counted. Choices made while exhausted were weighed. Nothing was overlooked. Nothing was wasted. I did not answer with advice. I answered with decision. That is why the air around you shifted, heavy and charged at the same time. You sensed an ending approaching. Not fear, recognition. Patterns carried through bloodlines are being cut. Cycles passed quietly are stopping here. What haunted those before you will not follow forward. Not because you were stronger, not because you were flawless, but because intervention stepped in. I address families completely. Not halfway, not gently when force is required. Endings are happening now. Doors are sealing permanently. Assignments have expired. Authority is transferring to the one who walked through storms and did not lose their essence. If something in you recognizes this, that is not emotion. That is awareness. You feel what time it is, and that sensitivity matters more than you know. Do not withdraw. Stay present. What is ending is only one layer. What triggered it and what follows requires precision. You thought the pressure came from stress, fatigue, inner conflict, but that explanation never settled, because what you feel is ancient. It runs through generations. This did not begin with you. You stepped into momentum already moving. Prayers you never heard. Tears you never saw. Battles fought quietly on knees, somewhere in your bloodline. Someone asked for mercy. Someone asked for a future they could not imagine. They did not know your name, but heaven did. You were positioned not just to succeed, but to shift what was possible for everyone connected to you. That is why the weight felt unfamiliar. That is why resistance felt excessive. You are standing at a generational crossroads, old cycles exposed, new paths opening through you. This is not private, it is familial. I trusted you with this weight because I already knew what would come through you. Not survival alone, but freedom. I am exact. I do not react late. When I declare change, it is because the season expired, not paused, not extended. Expired. Seasons answer to my calendar. When one ends, it stops responding. Effort cannot revive it. Prayer cannot sustain it. Explanation cannot keep it alive. What I close seals, what drained more than it was designed to take is lifting now. What overstayed its purpose is removed. I say, enough confusion, enough stagnation, enough carrying what was never permanent. This is not emotional relief. It is divine termination. When I end a season, nothing resurrects it. What follows is not continuation. It is crossing. Rules are changing. Provision is changing. Identity is shifting. What governed you no longer applies. You are standing where one chapter ends and another begins. And what comes next will not operate by old rules. Pressure was not punishment. It was proximity. Pressure forms what I intend to keep. Birth announces itself through strain. Pain is passage, never conclusion. What you felt was overlap. Old resisting release, new insisting entry. That tension was movement, not stagnation. The pressure has completed its assignment. What formed beneath it is ready. What ended has ended fully. I am not closing chapters to humiliate you. I am closing them to liberate you. What feels like loss is clearance. What feels like interruption is mercy. I do not empty hands to leave them bare. I clear them to prepare you to carry more. What was delayed will accelerate. What felt unmoving will gain momentum. I redeem time. I compress seasons. I recover what delay attempted to steal. I am restoring not just circumstance, but your capacity to move forward unburdened. Awake, ready. This is not the moment for hesitation. It is the moment for alignment. Do not look back. What is behind you lost authority. Forward is where grace moves. Heaven has decided. Alignment allows it to manifest. You are not wandering. You are led. Marked. Set apart. What pressed you was proof. I do not test what I have not empowered. What broke around you cleared space. What fell apart was never meant to follow. You are being prepared to carry legacy, to stand as evidence that cycles can end, that bloodlines can shift, that darkness does not have the final word. This is not the end. This is the threshold. What opens next has been watching you, just as closely as you were waiting. I have marked you, awakened you, positioned you. Now comes the crossing. Chosen one. I speak again because what I am revealing now goes deeper. The isolation you felt was not accidental. It was engineered. There are seasons when I separate, not to punish, but to preserve. You wondered why conversations grew shallow, why rooms felt colder, why familiar voices no longer reached you the same way. That was not rejection. That was protection in disguise. You were removed quietly, not announced, not explained. One connection at a time, one misunderstanding at a time, one silence that lingered longer than expected. You thought distance meant loss, but distance meant filtration. Not everyone could walk with you into what was forming, and I would not allow contamination near something sacred under construction. You noticed it first in small ways. The chair at gatherings that felt empty even when people were present. The laughter that no longer landed. The feeling of being tolerated instead of understood. You carried that quietly. You told yourself you were imagining it, but your spirit knew. You were being set apart. Isolation was not the wound. Confusion was, because you kept asking, why now? Why during exhaustion? Why when you needed support the most? But I isolate before elevation. I separate before assignment. I remove distraction before authority. What you call loneliness, I call preparation. There were moments you replayed conversations, wondering if you said too much or not enough, wondering when everything shifted. But nothing broke suddenly. It simply revealed what could not follow you forward. Some people are assigned for comfort, others for transition. Very few are assigned for destiny, and destiny always narrows the path. You were not abandoned. You were escorted into clarity. That silence you felt was not absence, it was space. Space for discernment, space for truth to surface without noise, space for you to hear yourself again. Because before I elevate a voice, I remove the crowd around it. You carried empathy even while depleted. You absorbed emotions that were never yours to hold. You felt atmospheres heavier than words could explain. You would enter rooms fine and leave drained. You thought something was wrong with you, but nothing was broken. You are sensitive because you were designed to perceive beyond surface. And that gift was being refined. The exhaustion was not weakness. It was expenditure. You gave without realizing how much was leaving you. You listened. You supported. You carried burdens in silence. And still you showed up. Still you smiled. Still you tried. That is why the fatigue felt disproportionate. You were pouring from a place others never accessed. I allowed the drain to expose the need for separation. Not everyone deserves access to your energy. Not every story requires your empathy. Not every crisis is yours to carry. You are not here to be consumed. You are here to be aligned. And alignment requires boundaries you were only just learning to establish. Then came the betrayal. Not dramatic, not loud, subtle. The kind that hurts deeper because it comes from those you invested in most. A confidence shared that returned as gossip. Loyalty given that came back as silence. Support offered that turned into judgment. You replayed those moments at night, asking how kindness became currency for harm. That pain was not wasted. It revealed where your heart was open without protection. It exposed who benefited from your light without honoring it. I allowed the betrayal because truth cannot remain hidden forever, and I will not build your future on unstable connections. What broke your heart also broke agreements that were never meant to last. You questioned yourself, wondered if being generous was a mistake, if trusting was naive, if love made you foolish. But I tell you now, compassion was never the error. Misplacement was, and I am correcting that. I am teaching you discernment without bitterness, strength without hardness, boundaries without guilt. You were never meant to become colder. You were meant to become clearer. That is why the hurt did not harden you. It refined you. You did not lose your tenderness. You learned where to place it, and that wisdom will protect you in what comes next. Waiting weighed heavily on you. The sense of calling without confirmation. The promise without evidence. Nights when you asked quietly, "When is it my turn? When will something move?" I did not forget you. I was aligning timing, character, and position simultaneously. Because when I release suddenly, there is no margin for misalignment. The delay was not denial. It was calibration. I was strengthening your footing, so when momentum arrives, you do not stumble. I was teaching you patience that does not panic, faith that does not rush, endurance that does not resent. Because what I am entrusting you with cannot be sustained by impulse. It requires stability. You felt like the black sheep? Different. Misunderstood, out of rhythm with your own environment. But difference was not defect. It was designation. You were never meant to blend in. You were meant to interrupt patterns others normalized. And that assignment always isolates before it transforms. Now hear me clearly. The season of isolation is ending. The silence has done its work. The betrayal exposed what needed removal. The exhaustion revealed where replenishment must come from. You are not entering what comes next depleted. You are entering aligned. I am not sending you back to the same circles. I am repositioning you among those who recognize your value without extracting it. Connections will shift. Support will look different, and peace will return without explanation. What you endured privately prepared you publicly. What you survived quietly authorized you spiritually. You did not break. You did not quit. You did not lose yourself. And that is why authority is now resting on you. This was the wilderness, and the wilderness always ends with clarity. Chosen one. I continue because what you walked through has another layer. The exhaustion you carried was not only emotional, it was spiritual labor. You were holding weight that never showed itself openly. You woke up tired before the day began. You rested, yet never felt restored. You wondered how sleep stopped working. That was not physical imbalance. That was prolonged resistance. You were contending without knowing it. Standing in gaps you did not volunteer for consciously. Holding space for a family line that never learned how to release. You absorbed pressure others avoided. You carried tension others normalized, and your body felt it before your mind could explain it. You tried to stay functional. You forced routine. You told yourself to push through. But something inside you kept asking for silence. That was not weakness. That was your spirit asking for relief from constant vigilance. You were always braced, always alert, always ready to stabilize situations before they collapsed. That posture drains life when held too long. You learned early how to stay composed in chaos, how to read rooms, how to sense shifts before words were spoken. That skill protected you once, but it also kept you on guard. And guard becomes exhaustion when never lowered. I allowed that fatigue so you would finally lay down what was never meant to be permanent. You were not created to be the emotional anchor for everyone else. You were not assigned to rescue what refuses healing. You were not meant to live braced forever. And now I am teaching you how to rest without guilt, how to step back without apology, how to trust that not everything collapses when you stop holding it together. There were moments you felt invisible, giving everything, receiving little, watching others move forward while you remained still. That waiting tested you, because waiting without affirmation can feel like abandonment. But I was not absent. I was guarding the timing, because premature release would have cost you more than delay ever did. You asked questions late at night, quiet ones, honest ones. Have I been forgotten? Did I miss something? Is this really leading anywhere? Those questions did not offend me. They revealed how deeply you cared. And I answered them, not with noise, but with endurance. I kept you standing. And that itself was the answer. The wilderness is never about punishment. It is about stripping dependency, removing noise, clarifying allegiance. You learned how to stand without applause, how to believe without reinforcement, how to keep your integrity when no one was watching. That training cannot be taught publicly. It only forms in isolation. Others may never understand why you withdrew, why you stopped explaining, why you grew quieter. But quiet does not mean stagnant. Roots grow in silence. Foundations are laid underground. And what is being built beneath the surface determines what can rise without collapse. You were being recalibrated, old expectations dismantled, old definitions of success removed. You stopped chasing validation, stopped seeking permission. You began listening inward. That shift was subtle, but it changed everything. Because when approval loses control, authority begins to form. I was also teaching you restraint. Not every truth must be spoken immediately. Not every injustice requires reaction. Discernment is knowing when to move and when to wait, and you learned patience that does not panic, silence that does not retreat, strength that does not announce itself. Now understand this. The wilderness is ending because its purpose is complete. You learned what you needed. You released what you were carrying. You clarified what matters. And now clarity replaces confusion. Energy returns without effort. Direction sharpens without force. What comes next will not drain you the same way because you will not overextend. You will not rescue indiscriminately. You will not bleed to prove loyalty. You will move with wisdom, earned through survival. And that wisdom will preserve you. I am shifting your environment, subtly, strategically. You will notice different conversations, different invitations, different resonance. Some doors will remain closed without frustration. Others will open without struggle. That is alignment at work. The wilderness trained you to hear me without interference. And now that you recognize my voice, I am leading you forward, not back into survival, but into placement, not into noise, but into purpose. This is the end of wandering and the beginning of direction. Chosen one. Now I reveal the reason, not surface meaning, not motivational language, the hidden cause behind the wilderness you endured. Nothing about that season was accidental. I did not leave you there to watch you struggle. I stationed you there to strip interference. Because what was coming through you required purity of alignment, not speed. There are callings that cannot be activated in crowds. There are assignments that fracture if birthed under applause. You were carrying something that could not survive distraction. So I removed noise. I removed reinforcement. I removed false safety. And I watched what remained when nothing propped you up. What remained was integrity, quiet, unbribed, unperformative. You did not abandon who you were. You did not reshape yourself to survive socially. You stayed true without reward. That is why the wilderness did not destroy you. It authenticated you. I needed to see what you would choose without witnesses, whether you would still act with honor when outcomes were delayed, whether your compassion was conditional on return, whether your obedience depended on visibility. You passed every unseen test. The wilderness is where I confirm essence. Not talent, not charisma, essence. Who you are when nothing works. Who you remain when support disappears. Who you answer to when relief is postponed. That is where authority is forged. You felt forgotten, but you were being examined at a level words cannot explain. Angels do not test character. Time does. Delay does. Silence does. And you endured without becoming bitter. That endurance marked you. I was also separating you from inherited patterns. There are cycles that cannot be broken while surrounded by familiar agreement. As long as certain voices remained close, certain behaviors stayed normalized. So I removed proximity, because some curses only break when influence loses access. You were not just dealing with personal exhaustion. You were outgrowing inherited frameworks, beliefs about scarcity, beliefs about loyalty that required self-erasure, beliefs about love that equated endurance with virtue. I dismantled those slowly, because abrupt removal would have felt like identity loss. The wilderness taught you to stand without inherited scripts, to choose differently without permission, to listen beyond tradition. That is how generational interruption happens, quietly, firmly, without announcement. I also needed to empty you, not to weaken you, but to make room. You cannot carry legacy while still full of survival residue. Fear occupies space. Guilt occupies space. Obligation occupies space. I drained those slowly, through waiting, through unanswered questions, through necessary discomfort. You mistook that emptying for loss, but it was preparation. I was removing emotional debt, spiritual clutter, old vows you never consciously made but lived under anyway. And as they dissolved, clarity began returning. This is why the wilderness ends suddenly, not gradually. One moment you are still managing. The next, you realize the weight is gone. The season does not fade, it expires, because its work is complete. Now hear this carefully. You were not being shaped to survive again. You were being shaped to lead without reproducing damage, to move forward without repeating cycles, to carry authority without contamination. That is why I waited until exhaustion revealed every false support, until betrayal revealed misplaced trust, until isolation revealed true alignment. Only then could activation occur safely. What comes next will not require proving. It will not require overgiving. It will not require self-neglect. You will move from overflow, not depletion, from clarity, not confusion, from authority, not endurance. The wilderness did not delay your destiny. It secured it. Because now, nothing attached to you can sabotage what I release. No dependency, no hidden fear, no inherited limitation. This is the secret purpose. You were not abandoned. You were being protected from premature exposure. And now that protection shifts into positioning. Chosen one. I go deeper now, because the wilderness was not only about you, It was about containment. There are things I place inside a life that cannot be activated immediately, not because they are weak, but because they are powerful. Power without containment destroys its carrier. What I hid in you required stillness first, not movement, stillness, because stillness reveals motive. Noise disguises it. When everything slowed, when progress stalled, when nothing external validated you, your inner alignment surfaced. That alignment is what I was after. You wondered why opportunities stalled at the edge, why doors almost opened then shut, why momentum started then dissolved. That was not sabotage. That was shielding. If I had allowed full release before containment was formed, what I placed in you would have been exploited by people, by systems, by expectations not designed to steward it. So I slowed time around you. I restricted access. I delayed visibility. And I watched how you handled obscurity, whether you would try to force doors, whether you would compromise integrity to accelerate outcome, whether you would abandon process to escape discomfort. You did not. You stayed steady when nothing moved. You remained honest when shortcuts presented themselves. You resisted becoming someone else just to be seen. That restraint is rare, and restraint is the mark of those who can carry influence without corruption. I was also realigning your identity, removing labels others placed on you. Strong one, reliable one, fixer, mediator. You lived under those names without realizing how much they extracted from you. The wilderness stripped those identities away, and when they fell, you faced the question, who am I when I am not needed? That question unsettled you, because usefulness had become familiarity. But I was not removing your value. I was redefining it. You are not valuable because you carry others. You are valuable because you exist aligned. And until that truth anchored inside you, elevation would have been unsafe. This is why the wilderness often feels like loss of purpose, because false purpose must die before true assignment can rise. You were never meant to be consumed by obligation. You were meant to move with authority. Authority cannot coexist with guilt-driven service. I also separated you from generational agreement. There are patterns that persist, not because they are strong, but because they are unchallenged. You challenged them simply by becoming different. That difference created friction, distance, misunderstanding, and eventually silence. That silence was the breaking point. When agreement dissolves, cycles lose power. When proximity ends, repetition stops. You did not need to confront everything. You only needed to stop participating. And you did. Quietly. Consistently. That withdrawal was obedience, even when it felt like loss. Now understand this. What comes next will not feel heavy, because weight was never meant to follow you forward. The heaviness belonged to the breaking, not the building. And the breaking is complete. I am not sending you back to fix what you survived. I am moving you forward to build what could not exist before you. The wilderness ensured you would not replicate damage with new tools. It ensured you would not carry old wounds into new spaces. This is why clarity is returning suddenly. Why energy lifts without explanation. Why peace arrives without circumstances changing yet. That is internal alignment locking into place. That is containment complete. The wilderness did not make you smaller. It refined your capacity. It slowed you so you would not fracture under acceleration. Because what I am releasing next will move faster than you expect. And speed requires stability. You are no longer bracing. You are standing. You are no longer surviving. You are positioned. What was hidden is now safe to emerge. What was delayed is now authorized. What was forming beneath silence is ready to move. This is the end of preparation and the edge of transition. Chosen one. Now the shift announces itself. Not with noise, not with spectacle, with authority. The moment containment completed, Movement was authorized. What you feel is not anticipation. It is activation beginning quietly. The atmosphere around you is changing because permission changed. What once resisted you no longer has jurisdiction. Doors that ignored effort will respond to alignment. Resistance that lingered will dissolve without confrontation. This is not because you tried harder. It is because timing turned. I say this plainly. The season you survived cannot follow you. Its laws do not apply beyond this point. You will notice it first internally. Decisions feel lighter. Fear loses urgency. Old questions stop repeating. That is not relief. That is authority settling into place. You are not stepping into chaos. You are stepping into order. The kind that feels unfamiliar because you lived too long inside disorder. Peace may feel strange at first, not because it is wrong, because you are no longer braced. Your nervous system is learning a new environment. What opens next will not ask you to bleed to belong. It will not demand over-explanation. It will not punish rest. It will recognize your frequency immediately. Alignment attracts without persuasion. When it arrives, it feels natural, not forced, not dramatic. I am repositioning provision, not random opportunity. Strategic placement. Resources will appear where obedience already exists. Support will rise where clarity lives. You will not have to chase what is assigned. It will locate you. There is a short window now where movement accelerates. Not rushed, decisive. This is where momentum replaces stagnation. Where months of pressure convert into forward motion. Where what was delayed begins to respond quickly. I mark this window as 48 hours, not as urgency, as confirmation. A marker that transition has crossed from preparation into execution. During this window, pay attention to what lifts effortlessly. Notice what releases without struggle. Observe who stops pulling at you. That is clearance in real time. I am removing friction so you can move cleanly. Do not resurrect what I ended. Do not negotiate with what expired. Nostalgia will attempt to speak. Guilt may try to follow, but neither has authority now. What ended did its work. What opens carries different rules. Your role is not to rush. It is to respond. Alignment is response, not anxiety. When you move from clarity, effort multiplies. When you move from fear, effort drains. Choose clarity. You will feel an invitation to step forward in ways that once felt unsafe. Not reckless, grounded. This is courage without desperation, obedience without panic, movement without collapse. I am restoring finances with structure, not impulse, not temporary relief. Stability. Streams that do not require self-betrayal. Provision that does not demand exhaustion. Overflow that respects your boundaries. I am restoring relationships with resonance, not obligation, not history alone. People who see you clearly, who do not compete with your peace, who do not feed on your empathy. Mutuality will replace imbalance. I am restoring identity with certainty. You will no longer question who you are becoming. You will recognize yourself in your own decisions again. Confidence will return without arrogance. Strength without hardness. This shift is quiet but irreversible, like a river changing course beneath the surface. By the time it is visible, the direction is already set. That is what is happening now. Trust the simplicity of what aligns. Release the drama of what resists. You are not losing anything of value. You are gaining momentum without weight. What comes next will confirm itself through peace, not through chaos, through doors opening without begging, through rest that does not require explanation, through progress that does not cost your soul. I am with you in this transition, not as observer, as architect. The wilderness is behind you. The shift is active, and what follows will carry evidence that this was precise, chosen one. Now I declare what manifests next, because a shift without evidence would violate order. What activates spiritually must anchor physically, and the first arena that responds is provision. You learned how to survive with less, how to stretch, how to calculate, how to carry uncertainty without collapsing. That skill kept you alive, but it was never meant to be permanent. Scarcity taught discipline, not destiny, and discipline has now completed its assignment. What I release now is not reckless abundance. It is restoration with structure, flow with intelligence, increase that does not destabilize you, money that does not control you, resources that arrive without demanding compromise. You will notice movement where nothing responded before. Conversations shift tone. Opportunities resurface differently. Offers come cleaner. You are no longer negotiating from desperation. You are choosing from alignment. That changes everything. Provision responds to authority, not effort. When internal order stabilizes, external order follows. You are no longer leaking energy through fear or obligation. That alone creates space for increase. I am not giving you what replaces pain. I am giving you what supports purpose. That distinction matters. You will not confuse relief with calling. You will not trade peace for speed. You will recognize what is sustainable. Financial restoration will not arrive as chaos. It will arrive as clarity, as systems, as consistency, as opportunities that respect your limits, streams that do not drain your integrity, expansion that does not demand your exhaustion. I am closing old financial agreements you made under pressure. Decisions rooted in survival are losing authority. You will not be punished for choices you made while afraid. They serve their purpose. Now they release you. What you receive next will feel lighter, not because it is smaller, because it is aligned. You will manage without anxiety, steward without fear, give without depletion. That is restoration. I am also restoring dignity, the quiet kind, the kind that comes when you no longer feel behind, when comparison stops pulling at you, when you recognize your timing was not late, it was exact. Momentum will increase steadily, not in bursts that collapse, but in progression that holds. You will feel confidence returning to your decisions, not bravado, certainty. You will trust your discernment again. This restoration extends beyond finances. It touches health, emotional regulation, sleep, breath. You will notice your body unbracing, your mind settling, your spirit no longer scanning for threat. That is evidence the war ended. I am not compensating you for suffering. I am repositioning you for stewardship. Because what I entrust next requires clarity, not adrenaline, presence, not panic. You will not need to announce this change. Others will sense it. They will comment on your calm, your steadiness, your focus. You will carry yourself differently without trying. Authority does that naturally. This is not temporary relief. It is a new baseline. And from this baseline, you will build without collapse, create without fear, move without burning yourself to stay warm. What I restore now confirms what the wilderness prepared. You were never being delayed. You were being aligned to receive without distortion. And now distortion has been removed. This is tangible restoration. Not imagined, not symbolic, practical, sustainable, quietly powerful. Chosen one. This is the seal, not a performance, not a ritual for others to see, a covenant formed in stillness. I do not end what I began lightly. When I close a chapter, I establish protection over what follows. What I am sealing now cannot be reopened by regret, by guilt, or by familiar voices calling you back. The door behind you is shut, not slammed, sealed. You are not carrying the old weight forward. It has no permission beyond this point. The authority that governed survival seasons has expired. The voice that demanded endurance at the cost of self has been silenced. The identity that existed only to hold things together has been released. I place clarity where confusion lived. I place peace where vigilance ruled. I place order where chaos lingered. This is not temporary alignment. This is re-established foundation. From this point, discernment sharpens. You will recognize what belongs without debate. You will feel when to move without forcing. You will know when to wait without anxiety. That knowing is not hesitation. It is maturity. I bless your steps with steadiness, not haste. I bless your decisions with accuracy, not fear. I bless your resources with purpose, not excess that corrupts. I bless your relationships with resonance, not obligation. You will not need to explain why you no longer tolerate certain dynamics. You will not need to justify rest. You will not need to defend boundaries. Alignment speaks for itself. When pressure returns, and it may remember this, pressure now refines expansion, not survival. It no longer asks you to carry what is not yours. It asks you to steward what has been entrusted. I establish quiet protection around your path, not visible to all, but effective. What is not assigned will lose interest. What intends harm will meet delay. What carries confusion will be redirected away from you. This is silent covering. Your life will begin answering questions others have not learned how to ask yet, not through preaching, through embodiment, through consistency, through the way your presence stabilizes environments without effort. You are no longer proving anything. You are proceeding. And that distinction changes the ground beneath you. Now receive this internally. No outward signal required, no declaration demanded. Let the agreement settle within you, like breath returning after long strain. This covenant is active because you are aligned, not because you announced it. The wilderness is complete. The shift is active. Restoration is unfolding. And the future before you carries less noise and more authority than anything behind you ever could. I have spoken, and what I have sealed stands.